Hi, welcome to Afternoon Art Club. My name is Miss Kim. I'm the Curator of Education at the Florence County Museum, and this is Afternoon Art Club for 1st through 3rd graders. This is our second January session. This session is a re-recording of our original session that happened on Thursday, January the 28th. We had an issue with the recording, and so we're re-recording it today. So if you followed along live with us and you're watching this as a review, it may look a little different, but the outcome will be the same. And if it's your first time watching, just know that this is a re-recording of our live session. So today we're going to be taking our clay pinch pots and we're going to be turning them into fish sculptures. So you guys are going to be adding lots of fishy details to your pinch pots today to turn them into some super cute textured fish sculptures. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop view with you so you can follow along as I'm talking and working. So let's get going. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, I hope. Okay, and I will try to get our tabletop view up. There it is. And I am going to, try to zoom in a little bit so that we have a bit of a better view here. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna get that settled so you can see what's happening right on the desktop here, and go ahead and lock our focus so that is not distracting. All right, guys, so on our desktop, you can see just a couple of things. I'm gonna move this over so I can see what's happening. Okay, so I have my pinch pot from last class. So it's just a simple little pinch pot. We talked all about how to make that last session. So in session 1, if you have not watched session 1, then go back and watch that session before you try to do today's session. I also have the rest of the clay. Remember, we only used half of our clay for our pinch pot. So I have the rest of the clay from that very first session. And I have a few other tools and materials that I've gathered here to use today. Now, you may have some of these tools and materials available to you, but you may not have them available to you. And if there's something you don't have, then just look around the house and see what you could use that might be similar. So don't worry about trying to find the exact same things that I'm using here. Just follow along and use anything you can find that might work similarly. So the first thing I have is a popsicle stick. This is kind of a big tongue depressor size popsicle stick that I had lying around. But yours doesn't have to be this big. Any old popsicle stick will work if you have something like this. This is just a plastic knife. I'm going to be using this for cutting out shapes today. And I can also use the knife blade or the knife end down here to make some textures. So those are some of the materials I have. I have some toothpicks. I could use those. I'll show you lots of different ways that you can use toothpicks. And I have an old art paintbrush, not paintbrush, toothbrush. Now, really important, guys, do not go to the bathroom and get your good toothbrush that you use for brushing your teeth, because what we're going to do with this toothbrush will make it kind of yucky. So ask your mom or dad if there's an old toothbrush lying around the house that you might be able to use for arts and crafts. And that is what I'm using. I actually have several toothbrushes. You can see this one has paint all over the handle. I have several old toothbrushes that I just use for art projects, and I just keep them for that purpose. So it's a really handy tool. I also have a little cup of water, so that's going to come in handy today as we're working. And in our original live video, I also had a marker, just like a Crayola marker, nothing fancy. And I was using really just the tip of that marker, the rounded part of the edge, to make some textures. But this is an old glue stick that I have lying around, and I can use that for the same purpose. Anything that kind of has a rounded edge is going to be useful for that. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to do is take a look at our pinch pot. Now, my pinch pot, you'll notice it's still got some kind of wrinkly areas on it. I can try to smooth that out a little if I want, but I really don't need to because I am getting ready to start adding fish details to this pot, and a lot of these are going to get covered up. So I might wait till the end because I'm going to be adding lots of texture. You can see on my one that I've finished, all these textures are going to kind of cover up some of those details. So the first thing we want to do is take our extra clay that we have, and we're going to go ahead and divide this into some smaller balls of clay. So I'm going to divide it into 4 balls of clay. So to do that, I'm going to divide it in half. I just broke it in half. I didn't measure it or anything. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. And then I'm going to break those 2 halves in half again. So I have 2 halves there, and I have 2 halves here. So now I have 4 about equal pieces of clay. And I'm going to keep those in my little baggie just so that they don't dry out, because I don't want them to be dry when I'm working with them. Now, the first part of this is going to be to add the tail to our fish. And our fish's body is actually, we're going to take our pinch pot and turn it onto its side like this. And this is going to end up being the fish's body. You can see that here. This was the opening of my pinch pot originally. And when I laid it on its side, that's when I started adding the tail and the fins, so that the opening was the mouth of the fish. Now, to do this, to start out by making the mouth of our fish, I'm going to go ahead and kind of shape this into a fishy mouth. Now, your fishy mouth can look any way you want. This one kind of looks like a scared, frowny face, kind of face. I'm going to maybe make this one a little bit more cheery. I might bring in his mouth on the sides a little bit. He's going to have sort of like a kissy fish face. Kissy fish. And all I'm doing is kind of squeezing the sides gently. I don't want to squeeze too hard because it might crack a little bit if I do. So this is going to have sort of a crazy fish mouth. I might keep the bottom flat so that it's like this. So his mouth is going to be a little bit silly looking, just like that. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of keep moving it all around until it looks the way I want it to look. This is a very silly fish mouth. You could look at pictures of fish on the internet and see if you want yours to look like a particular type of fish. I'm going to use the handle of this toothbrush just to kind of push that in a little because that space is a little too small for my fingers. Okay, so I just made a very silly fish mouth. It doesn't really even look like a fish mouth yet, but believe me, by the time I'm done, it will look like a fish mouth once I start adding details. All right, so I have my silly fish-shaped mouth here. This one kind of was open with a little bit of a frowny face. This one, I gave a little bit more of a creative mouth. So your imagination is your only limitation here. Just think about what your fishy mouth could look like, and don't worry about if it looks realistic or not. It could be an imaginary type of fish or a real type of fish. Okay, so now I have the mouth of my fish. Now I want to find out where the bottom is and where the top is, because that's going to help me know exactly where to put the tail. So this is going to be the bottom. This flat part's going to be the bottom. And this is where my tail is going to go, right at what used to be the bottom of my pinch pot. That's where my tail is going to go. So I'm going to take one of my balls of clay. I broke it into 4 balls. And I'm going to go ahead and just sort of roll that into a ball. I want to just roll it into a ball. And then I'm going to flatten that out into a clay pancake. Now, I'm using this part of my hand. I'm not using the tips of my fingers to press down to make my pancake, because if I do that, then I'm just going to have big fingerprint marks in my clay pancake, and I don't want that. So I'm just using the palm of my hand. You can see that here. All right, so now that I have a little clay pancake, you can see the thickness of it. I'll show you in relationship to my pinky finger. It's a little bit thinner than my pinky finger, a little bit thinner than my pinky finger, but not super duper thin. We still want it to be nice and strong. All right, and now I'm going to use a toothpick to draw a fish tail shape, okay? So I'm going to use this toothpick to draw the shape of my fish tail. So here's what I want my fish tail to look like. Okay? It's not perfect, and if you draw something you don't like, just kind of smear over it with your finger and redo it. And you might like something like that better. So, and like right here, I don't like those straight lines. I might want those lines to curve in a little bit more. Like that, okay? So I'm going to go ahead there we go. I like that a little bit better. It might take you a few minutes to get exactly what you want it to look like. There we go. I'm happy with that fishy tail. So I'm going to just take either my clay or my toothpick and press it all the way down into the clay to cut out that shape. Or I can use my plastic knife that I have here to cut it out. I could use my plastic knife like that to cut out my fish's tail. I find that the Q-tip, or not Q-tip, toothpick really works the best. But whatever works for you is totally great. All right, so one more little bit to cut out. There we are. All right, so now we have a tail that can go onto our fish. Now mine's a little bit long, so I'm going to cut a little bit off of it. And you'll notice that I have a nice kind of flat area to connect my tail to my fish. That's what we want. And to even make that flat area a little bit bigger, I'm going to hold this and I'm going to tap this right on the table. So tap, 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 tap. And that even flattened it just a little bit more. It opened it up and kind of flattened that area out even a little bit more. You can kind of see from that view that it's made it even a little bit bigger here. And what that does is just gives us a large area for our tail to attach to our fish. Now, before we do this, I want to explain to you how we're going to go about joining two pieces of clay. And while I do that, I'm just going to kind of smooth out the edges of my fish's tail just by taking those sharp corners, sharp edges, and kind of patting them down with my finger, or you could smooth them out with your thumb. Whatever works, but what I don't want to do is pinch this. I don't want it to get any thinner than it is. So go ahead and smooth that out. Now, to attach two pieces of clay, we have to do a little more than just smushing these two pieces of clay together. We have to make sure that they're going to stay really well stuck to each other. Now, the reason that's a problem is because as clay dries, it shrinks just a little bit. And as the clay shrinks, any place that there are two pieces of clay stuck together, when it starts to shrink, those two pieces want to come apart. And so we need to do something to really make those two pieces of clay stick together, kind of like your intertwining fingers, to make sure that they do not come apart as the clay shrinks. So what we're going to do is something called scoring. Now I'm going to show you two ways to do this today. The first way is going to be with a toothpick. And to do that, you're just going to use your toothpick to make scratches in the clay, just some scratches, anywhere that you're going to attach two pieces of clay. So this one's going to go right here. So I need to make some scratches right there. On both pieces of clay, I need to make scratches. Then I'm going to use one finger, and I'm going to dip it in the water one time, even get some of that water off, and rub that water onto the clay to sort of create a little bit of clay glue. We call it slip. It's kind of like clay glue. Do the same thing on this other side. Really rub that in. Rub, rub, rub until it's not shiny anymore. And then smush those two pieces of clay together, and that will help them stick. Now there's an easier way to do this. I've shown you the tricky way first. The easier way is with your toothbrush. If you found an old toothbrush that you can use, you can dip your toothbrush in the water, kind of shake it off to get the extra water out, and then just sort of scrape the clay with a toothbrush. And that'll make those scratches and put the water on at the same time. And then we can smush these two pieces of clay together to add its tail, like that. You can see his little tail. Now I'm going to use my finger just to go around the outside and smooth out. You can see how I'm using my finger like this. I am not pinching anything, still not pinching. I'm just using my finger around the outside to smooth it out. See, I'm just using my finger just like that, smoothing it out. Okay. All right, and now our fish has a tail. Now, this is going to be the top. So this is what his tail looks like. You can even move around his fins a little. You can use a little bit of force to kind of change the shape of them if you want to make it a little bit more elegant looking, or if you just want to change the shape just a little bit. You can just smush here and there to change the shape. Remember to smooth with your finger, don't pinch. It's just smooth with your finger. And I like to kind of try to make sure his tail is straight, not too wobbly, but maybe you want a wobbly tailed fish, which is totally fine if you do. All right, so now his tail is nice and attached. I don't think that's coming off. It's on there firmly. We are in good shape with that. So our fish has a tail. That's our first step. We got some little extra pieces here. I'm just going to set those to the side. Now we're going to get our next piece of clay. We're going to start out the same exact way. We're going to make a ball of clay. So I'm just going to roll this clay into a ball in my hand. Really roll it into a nice smooth ball. The smoother your ball is, the smoother your clay pancake will be. So really get it into a ball. And then go ahead and press that down, same exact way we did before, into clay pancake. Also, same as before, we're using our palm, not our fingers. And we are pressing it not too thin. We want to keep it maybe right around the size of our pinky finger. Okay, and now I'm going to make a fin for the top of my fish to go right up here. You can see the fin I made on this one is sort of a bumpy fin that goes all the way down his back. Yours doesn't have to look anything like that. I might do mine a little bit differently this time. I might make mine a little bit more like a shark's fin this time. So don't be afraid to change the way it looks. If you don't like it, change the way it looks. All right, so I might do a double fin here, like that. Okay, so I'm gonna just cut this out. I like to use my toothpick to cut things out just by pressing it in. You might have to go over it a couple times. Get some of that out. Okay. You can see I'm just cutting through right here. Cutting through. Cutting through. Keep going, just like that. Okay. And last but not least, this bit. Okay. Get that off. All right, so now I have sort of like a little shark fin that's going to go on the top of my fish, but I also want to create sort of a smooth surface for this to attach to my fish. So I'm just going to kind of create a flat straight line to get myself started. And here are my fish's fins. Now I may want to cut this a little bit off so it's not too big. It's a little too much clay there. All right, so now I'm just going to take a look at where I want to attach this to my fish, and I want it to go kind of like that. All right, so I'm going to do the exact same thing I did last time. I'm going to smooth out my fin first. It's easier to smooth it out before you attach it, because once you attach it, it's a little bit more fragile. So go ahead and smooth it out. Make sure it's nice and smooth, no sharp edges. Just kind of softly press those edges in. You don't want any sharp edges because sharp edges on clay can feel really sharp once the clay is hard. So kind of press your ends and edges so they're not too sharp. Even on my pointy part of my fin, I like to kind of push that down with my finger so it's not actually sharp. Okay, and now I'm going to attach this the same exact way. I'm going to kind of flatten it out a little by pushing down on the table. So I've created a nice good flat surface for attaching it. I'm going to figure out where I want it to attach, which is right here. So I know I'm going to have it right there on my piece of clay. All right, and I can either use the toothpick method to scratch and then add a little bit of water and rub that on, or the toothbrush method, which I just stick my toothbrush in the water, shake it off a little bit, scrub, scrub, scrub some of that toothbrush into the, scratch it into both pieces of clay now, both the fin and the body. And then I'm just going to press this on where I want it. Give it a nice good push. And when you get to this part, you might want to put your hands inside of your fish to make sure it doesn't collapse on the inside, just to support it. I'm not really pushing from the inside, but I'm just supporting it on the inside. I'm going to do the same thing I did last time. Just kind of squeeze, squeeze, squeeze like this. Okay. Do the other side too. I'm keeping my hand on the inside of my fish, my other hand on the inside of my fish, so it doesn't collapse. And if you have a part that it's hard to get your fingers down into, you could use a tool like your popsicle stick to smooth it out a little. That's really good for tight spaces, those tight spaces. And I'm just using that to kind of smooth it down. You just want to make sure it's nice and smooth. I'm going to smooth it at the front here a little bit. Again, your popsicle stick is a good tool. Anything you can find that helps you smooth things out. Anything can really be a clay tool. You could use a pencil, like the round part of a pencil. Just kind of do like that, roll it on there. Anything that you have, see, I'm just kind of rolling that on the surface to flatten it out. Anything that you have around the house could be a clay tool. All right, so now I have my silly fishy face right there. I've got some fins and a tail. I'm gonna kind of soften the look of that fin up a little. While it's still soft is the time to make sure you like the way it looks. So if it looks a little too bumpy or you don't like something about it, change it now while you can. Once the clay's hard, it's too late to make changes. All right, so I'm pretty happy with the way that looks. I've got his tail and I've got his fins. Might want that one to be a little more pointy. There we go, just like that. Now, the next step is to start working on his face. I'm gonna give my fish some eyes. So I'm gonna take these scraps and kind of put them with my other scraps because I do want to use those in a little bit. Our next two steps are gonna be to do eyes, and then we're gonna do side fins as well. I wanna do my eyes first. And so what I'm gonna do is take another one of my balls of clay. I'm gonna divide it in half. I'm gonna put half of it with my scrap clay over here. And then the other half is what I'm gonna use for my eyes. And I'm actually gonna take this ball of clay and divide it in half again. Now these eyes may still be a little bit too big. So if they are, just pinch off a little more clay until you get eyes that are just about the size that you want them to be. So I'm gonna pinch off some clay here. And here we go. I'm just gonna roll, roll, roll. Okay, and now I have two kind of identical balls of clay, and I'm gonna add those just to where I want my fish's eyes to be, okay? So I'm gonna do that the same way I've done in the past. I'm gonna take my toothbrush, dip it in some water. You could also use the toothpick and some water on your finger here. And I'm just gonna scrub, scrub, scrub where I want his eyes to go. Scrub, 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 scrub. I'm also gonna kind of scrub on these balls of clay like that. And then I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of press them on to the clay where I want them to go. I bent my tail trying to do that, but that's okay. Still soft enough to fix it. And I'm just gonna kind of support it from the inside and press the eye on. This guy has eyes that kind of stick up. So you can see his eyes are roughly on. I'm gonna smooth out a little bit around his eyes. Just sort of smooth things out a bit. Try and fix his little tail where I bent it. If you bend something or break something, then just reattach it. It will be okay. All right, so now I have a fish with two very silly eyes, and I'm going to go ahead now and make his eyes, give his eyes a little bit more character. He looks a little scary right now. We're like a scared fish. I'm gonna use my thumb and I'm just gonna kind of press in a little bit here to sort of create an area for his eye. And if it looks a little funny around the mouth area, don't worry about that. We're gonna actually cover that up. And that's not something I showed in the live video, but I remembered it after our live video, so I'm gonna show it to you. Okay, so I've just used my thumb to create a little bit of an indentation where his eye is going to go. And then if you have a pencil or something that's a little bit pointy, you can kind of stick that in, just twist it a little bit to create a pupil. So you can see. Now he's starting to look like a little guy with eyes. And again, if you see something that you don't really like the shape of or you want to change it now while you can, okay? So we have his eyes. You can see his eyes. We're gonna add some big fishy lips here at the end. but we've got eyes now, and we have fins. And the last thing we're going to add to his body are his side fins. So we're going to take our last ball of clay that we separated out at the beginning here. We're going to roll that into a ball, just like we did at the beginning. Sorry, things are moving around on my table surface. All right, and we are going to break that in half. And we are going to roll those into balls and make 2 clay pancakes so that we can get some little fins, little side fins. So 2 small clay pancakes here. There's one. You want these to be as close to the same as they can be. If one's a little bit bigger than the other, that's fine. But you want them to be definitely about the same thickness. And I'm just going to draw the shape of a little side fin here. Something like that. And I'm going to go ahead and cut one out. And then I can use this one that I'm cutting out now to help me decide what the shape of the second one is going to be. So I'll just trace this for my second one. So here's my first fin. Here we go. First one. Now it's a little bit long on this side, so I might cut that off. I'm going to put this one on top of my other clay pancake and just kind of trace it. By tracing this one, I can ensure that these are just about the same. It might need to be a little wider. Okay. All right, and so I can then cut out this fin. Just going to pull that extra clay away. Making all the details of your fish does take some time. So if you can't finish it all in one sitting, just make sure to pack up the rest of your clay in your plastic baggie. And I'm going to flatten this guy out just a little bit so he's a little bit larger. And I'll do the same. I wanted him, I maybe cut him a little smaller than I wanted him to be. Okay, that looks better. And I'm going to make sure that these are cut to maybe a little shorter. Okay, so I have 2 fins that are pretty much the same. And I'm going to give them a little press, just like that, on both sides. There's one. I'm just pressing the edges in so that there's no sharp edges. And we're not actually going to be attaching this little short edge to our fishy. We are going to be attaching this back flat section to our fish like this so that it has a really nice hold. So I'm going to I'll use the toothpick method on one and the toothbrush method on one. So on the back of my fin, I'm just going to scrub, scrub, scrub. And where I want my fin to go, around the center, I'm going to scrub, scrub, scrub. And then I'm just going to take it on the side there and just kind of press it in. And I'm not pressing this back part in. You can see I can still get my finger underneath that, but I am going to smooth it down at the front. Smooth, 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 like that. So it's nice and smooth. Okay. And this, you can kind of even curl it out a little bit so it really looks like a fin. So you can see that's what it kind of looks like from the front. There's a side fin there. It's pressed on really well, but it's even kind of curled up a little on the side like that. Okay. So we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side, only this time I'll do it with the toothpick. So if you don't have an old toothbrush, you can kind of see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to make some scratches on the clay. I'm going to do the same thing with this, make some scratches. The scratches don't have to be beautiful. You're not going to see them. I'm going to dip my finger in the water, rub that onto the clay, rub, rub, rub. Also some water on the fin. Then take my fin. I want to try and line it up so that they are as close to the same as I can make them. And then just press it in. Not a big deal. All right, and then I'm gonna just smooth this one out, same as I did the other one, just with my finger there. Make sure you're supporting it from the inside. You see my thumb is on the inside of my fish, so make sure you're supporting it. All right. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and push that fin out a little. There we go. Okay. So I have a fish with 2 fins and 2 eyes and a really silly, crazy mouth and a top fin and a tail. And the last things I'm going to do are going to be to add some texture to the body of my fish. And I'm going to go through how to do that with you. And then the very, very last thing I'm going to do is show you how to add some really kind of wide fish lips that help bring your fish to life just a little bit and make his mouth look a little less crazy. All right, so first thing I'm gonna do is add some texture to my fish. And I'm gonna show you a couple of different ways to go about doing this. So you need to think about what you want the texture of his scales to be. I'm going to show you first how to do this with a popsicle stick. And it doesn't really matter what size the popsicle stick is. You'll just have different size scales if you have different sized ones. So I'm going to use a rounded end of a popsicle stick, and I'm just going to kind of press the top in like that. You see that kind of indentation I made there? And if I keep doing that all around the body of my fish, I start to get some nice fish scale texture. You can see that kind of looks like a fishy scale. And I'm just pressing that in to my fish body. So you're just pressing in the texture of those scales. Now on its fins, you might want those to have a similar texture to his body, or you might want it to have a little bit different texture. So if you want that texture to be a little bit different, then you could maybe make some stripes. You could use a pencil, just to use the tip of a pencil or your toothpick, and maybe make some stripes just by drawing that. Or you could even press in the side of your toothpick if you want it to be a little bit bolder here. There we go, just like that. Or you could even use the side of your popsicle stick to draw those stripes or textures in like that. Okay, so you can see we have some fish scale texture that we've added using our popsicle stick. On the other side, I'm going to show you how to use either a marker or, like I said, I'm using a glue stick, just the back side of a glue stick. Anything that has sort of that curve or that circle would work great. And I'm just going to take, I want to show you what I mean, this sort of circle edge, or you could just use the cap also. And I'm just going to press that in. See how that creates some texture? And I'm just going to keep pressing it in to create some round fish scale texture there. So a marker cap, a glue stick cap, anything that you have access to would work great. And if you got a kit from us at the museum, then you do have one of these glue sticks in there. So you should be able to get something with that curved fish scale texture. I believe there should be something you can find. Okay, and then again, I can add some texture to his fins, either with a popsicle stick or a toothpick, whatever I can find. Maybe even the little tines of a fork would be interesting. I'm going to add some of these to the tail as well. I might even add some curved lines to the tail just to help accentuate that a little. into the fins. Kind of just see those lines I'm making. But yours is yours alone, so you don't have to do any of the texture the way I'm doing it. You can do your texture the way you would like it to look to create your fish. Now, the fish, if you got clay from us at the Florence County Museum, then the clay is air dry clay. So you do not have to, it does not have to be cooked in a kiln or anything like that. So we've added some fun texture to our fish there. It doesn't have to be cooked in a kiln to harden. It just needs to sit out and air dry a little bit. So I'm going to add these last few lines of texture. And then the last thing I'm going to show you how to add is that. And if you do something you don't like, just smooth it out with your finger and do it again. The great thing about clay is it's very forgiving. If you don't like some lines that you've made, just smooth it out with your finger and try them again. You can do them really lightly to start with and then go back in and make your lines deeper if you like them. Okay, so that's a pretty fun fish sculpture with some different textures because I use different materials. So lastly, last but not least, let me show you how to make some fishy lips. So I'm going to take some of my scrap clay here and I'm going to roll it out into a coil. Now a coil is just a long snake-like piece of clay and I'm just going to roll it out. Roll, roll, roll. And I want to try to get this, and I'm using scrap clay, so whatever clay you have left will work great. I'm going to roll this out as long as I can get it because I want this to fit all the way around the mouth of my fish. I don't want to have to piece it in. So you'll notice that as I'm rolling my coil, I'm starting with my hands together, and as I'm rolling, I'm moving it back. I'm moving them apart from each other. And I'm moving my hands, I'm not just rolling in one spot, I'm moving my hands to different parts of my coil. So if you need help with this, ask the grown-up in your house to give you a little help rolling out a nice long snake of clay. And you want this to be about the size of your pinky finger. Again, I know we said that a couple times about other things. Look how long my piece of clay is getting. All right, that's probably about 18 inches long. That's very nice and long. All right, and let me show you how to add this to your fishy. So I'm going to use the toothbrush method here. I'm going to dip this toothbrush in some water. It's got clay on it. It's kind of yuck. Get some of the water off. And I'm just going to scrub it all around the mouth area of my fish, all the way around, like we're putting on some chapstick with a toothbrush. All right, so we went all the way around our fish with this. Now I'm going to start at the bottom and I am just going to trace the mouth of my fish with this coil. So I'm just setting it on and I'm not going to really smooth this in the way that I did other parts of my fish. I want to leave this kind of like a big, sort of a thick-lipped fish. All right, and I'm going to add that here and add that here. And when I get back around to the beginning, I can just pinch it off. I can kind of smush those two areas together. And I want to just press this down to make sure it's stuck really well. Make sure it's stuck really well. Just like that. And the area where we joined it together, we do want to smooth that together with our fingers, just to kind of make sure it looks like one fishy lip and not like two separate pieces. So you can see that kind of gives his lips a little bit of character, and it helps it look a little bit more finished, like a finished product. All right, so there we go. there is our finished fish sculpture. And like I said, I'm not gonna smooth that all the way around or anything. I want to leave that sort of separate. And as long as you used some scratches in the clay and some water, then that should stick just fine. So I am going to stop sharing. I hope that you guys have enjoyed making a crazy little fish sculpture. And you can keep kind of tweaking it. I'm going to keep messing with mine a little. I hope you've enjoyed making a fun, silly little fish sculpture with me out of a pinch pot. Look around your house and see what you can use to add details to your pinch pot fish sculpture. These guys are friends now. They'll sit together on my desk. All right, guys, I hope that you've enjoyed this. For those of you who missed the live session, I'm sorry that we've had to do this re-recording, but I hope that you've learned a lot. Feel free to watch the videos as many times as you need. If I move too fast or there's a detail that you didn't catch, please go back and watch again. Feel free to email me with any questions. I've enjoyed doing Afternoon Art Club with you this month for January. Afternoon Art Club will resume next week. So it will resume for 1st through 3rd graders on February the 4th. So that means we're not skipping a week this time, or yeah, we don't, it's not every 2 weeks this time, just this once. It'll be next week. So it will be Thursday, February the 4th. I will see you, and we will be starting a whole new project talking about sculpture. All right, guys, see you later.